Why is it that Buzzfeed News, a well-funded, very well-funded news organization, is getting into a mudslinging contest with random internet users? To make matters worse, if this was an attempt to prove that the right was getting things wrong, and they flubbed it and made themselves look wrong, BuzzFeed just made themselves look worse than a bunch of random internet users. Today, as many of you are already aware, there was an attempted terror attack in New York City. Near the Port Authority bus terminal, a man tried detonating a bomb, injuring himself and a few others. According to NBC News, a suspected terrorist detonated a potentially deadly improvised low-tech explosion device inside a New York City subway passageway during Monday morning rush hour, injuring himself and 3 other people and causing chaos at one of the city's key traffic hubs. The suspect, later identified as Akayed Ullah, 27, was taken into custody, NYPD Commissioner James O'Neill said. Former NYPD Commissioner Bill Bratton said preliminary information indicated that the explosion was carried out in the name of the Islamic State. O'Neill, the current commissioner, told reporters he couldn't delve into an ISIS connection at this point. He did make statements, but we're not going to talk about that right now, O'Neill said. This video is not to get into the complexities of terror or Islam or anything like that. This video is a criticism of the mainstream news because BuzzFeed News reporter Ryan Broderick immediately started compiling tweets and posts from around the internet accusing the far right of pushing an anti-Islam narrative. In a series of tweets, Broderick said things like, "The far right is beginning to activate over the reports of an explosion in NYC," with one tweet from Nothing Burger, Port Authority explosion, prompt police response. We have Tommy Robinson, tourist stampede amid reports of a blast in New York main bus station. And Must MAGA 16, sounds like terrorism in NYC. Well, I would say it does sound like terror, but I'm not surprised to see people speculating on the internet. And when we move up, he then calls out 4chan. There's a happening thread on 4chan. He goes up and criticizes r/the Donald. Far-right users are beginning to try and connect the dots between NYC explosion and the Trump protests in Jerusalem, with more posts from 4chan and from Reddit. Again, calling out Tommy Robinson, Breaking 911 and Breaking News Live, as well as saying that a video from Breaking 911 is unconfirmed and has already established an anti-Muslim far-right narrative. He even calls out Paul Joseph Watson for bringing up the fact that ISIS issued a chilling threat showing Santa next to a box of dynamite in Times Square. Now, why am I talking about this and showing you this guy's series of tweets? Well, he is the Deputy Global News Director for Buzzfeed, and BuzzFeed's official account retweeted him, as well as their show AM to DM, and even insinuated there might be a hoax here, saying, "In the wake of an explosion, terror attack, or other piece of breaking news, there are often false reports. @Broderick joins AM to DM this morning to make sure you don't fall for any hoaxes," and then it links to his series of tweets. Now, AM to DM is a show from BuzzFeed that often appears in the live section on the bottom right of Twitter, so it is a well-viewed, or at least likely to be seen video. This is large reporting from a major digital publisher, BuzzFeed. Earlier this morning on MSNBC Morning Joe, Bill Bratton appeared and said that this was likely terrorism and that this person had pledged to ISIS. He made some statements. Many of the people in the threads that this man Ryan Broderick was talking about are just quoting the Daily Mail, Fox, local Fox reporters, and even Bill Bratton. When called out because they were wrong, what did this character, Ryan Broderick, do? He doubled down. Instead of saying, yes, the initial tweets weren't misleading, as BuzzFeed had initially claimed, he said that I was simply happy that a 4chan troll narrative was correct. All of the screenshots in my thread predate official reports by at least 90 minutes, which means you're happy a 4chan troll race narrative came true, or you believe that a bunch of Twitter users watching cable news knew the motive and identity of the attacker before everyone else. Well, that's not entirely true because, as I said, Bill Bratton, the former NYPD commissioner, was on MSNBC around the same time as this thread. It is not necessarily the issue here. For one, we can say that attacking the initial speculative reports is asinine. Yes, people obviously speculate when news breaks. Why is that surprising? Why is it a news story that people on conservative channels or far-right channels are going to believe it's likely their worldview that this is happening? In an attempt to discredit these people, to imply that their statements were misleading, or in one instance to say, don't fall for any hoaxes, BuzzFeed got this one seriously wrong. because there was actual reporting coming out to suggest that this was terror. And a lot of these people that are being quoted on these threads were linking to actual news sources. In Broderick's own tweet, the far right activated in direct response to right-wing MSM, top Reddit comment sources Daily Mail, the Reddit live stub is all Fox streams, 4chan are watching local Fox streams, and Gateway Pundit's post is a Fox News rewrite. When he called out Breaking 911, Breaking 911 had a few of their tweets cited by major news reports like Good Morning America and Agence France Presse, AFP. So to imply that Breaking 911 is fueling this far-right narrative, or that their accounts are fueling a ton of far-right NYC explosion chatter, is disingenuous. Now, aside from insinuating that I was happy that 4chan was right, which is far from the truth, I'm more concerned with them putting up partisan nonsense, Ryan Broderick responded to Paul Joseph Watson by saying, "My guy, the first NYPD presser about the attack was literally less than half an hour ago," and he tweeted this at 10:18 a.m. However, Bratton was on MSNBC over an hour ago, to which another employee of Buzzfeed, Tom Namako, the deputy news director, responded, "Braxton," meaning Bratton, "is a private citizen. He's the former NYPD commissioner. You know that or are pretending like you don't." Now, I'm not sure what the point of this tweet is, but it seems like once again BuzzFeed doubled down on they were going to keep pushing this narrative. They pushed a narrative that the statements were misleading. They pushed a narrative that you might fall for a hoax and you need to protect yourself from this, right? The way they're framing things, that Breaking 911 is pushing a far-right narrative, it's clearly partisan and meant to imply that the statements coming out from people on the internet should not be trusted. And yes, to an extent, sure, don't believe random internet posts. But guess what? These are those exact same posts. My biggest gripe with this is that he is doing exactly what he's accusing others of doing, speculating when the facts aren't in, and it turned out he was wrong. And then he has the other employee of BuzzFeed, Tom Namako, somehow imply, I'm assuming this is some kind of implication, that Bill Bratton as a private citizen is not a good source, or he's not an official source. However, Bill Bratton, former NYPD commissioner, is an excellent source on issues like this. CNN and CBS News have much lighter standards for how they use sources, as seen by the fake news that came out just in the past week or so. But not only that, because as early as 9:27 a.m., NBC News confirmed through law enforcement at least some of what Bratton had said only a half an hour or so earlier. So these statements are incorrect. There was official reporting. They just didn't fact check. They jumped on the let's go after the partisans attack, when in reality they were doing the exact same thing they were accusing the other person of doing. The reason this frustrates me is that I'm watching two partisan groups complain, and sometimes the left is right and sometimes the right is right. In this instance, BuzzFeed News got into a mudslinging contest with a bunch of random internet users and actual well-reported mainstream news, and were wrong. Now, it's true. Whenever there's some kind of attack or explosion or shooting, people on 4chan and Reddit, certain subreddits, and on the right will immediately start speculating that it was Islamic terror. I'd say there's a decent amount of time where they're right, sometimes they're wrong. In fact, just recently, at the Oxford Circus scare in London, Tommy Robinson tweeted something out. He said, "How long until we find out that today's attack in Oxford Circus was by a Muslim who was again known to our security services?" Unfortunately, that wasn't the case, and the Oxford Circus thing was mostly just a scare. Nothing really happened. So it's true. Often when the right jumps the gun, they make mistakes too. However, let's take something into consideration. Tommy Robinson is a personality, and there is concern that people on the right are trying to discredit the mainstream media simply because they make mistakes sometimes. But in this instance, Ryan Broderick was calling out random internet users on Reddit and 4chan. Why is it that BuzzFeed News, a well-funded, very well-funded news organization, is getting into a mudslinging contest with random internet users? To make matters worse, if this was an attempt to prove that the right was getting things wrong, and they flubbed it and made themselves look wrong, BuzzFeed just made themselves look worse than a bunch of random internet users. At 9:05 a.m., the New York Post tweeted, "A 27-year-old Bangladeshi national who lived in Brooklyn and was inspired by ISIS is suspected of setting off a homemade explosive at the Port Authority," sources tell the Post. Are we only supposed to trust anonymous sources when they come from news organizations that are attacking the president? Or should we be skeptical of all sources? In this instance, we had Bill Bratton, not an anonymous source, and probably well-versed in the matter. So Buzzfeed, this is the hill they decided to die on, I suppose. In my opinion, this guy, Ryan Broderick, was more interested in proving 4chan wrong than fact-checking the story and waiting for details. But what he should have done, collect these statements. If the report comes out and shows that they were in fact wrong, then highlight it and say, look what happens with the speculation, and they're wrong. However, in this instance, he became his own example of jumping the gun, failing to check sources, accusing others of being wrong, when in fact he was the one who was wrong. And then instead of apologizing for it, he doubles down. I don't normally like to have this kind of Twitter drama between me and other journalists on my main channel. That's what my second channel is kind of reserved for. But the past few videos I've done have been about fake news, and I think this fits very well. This idea that an organization like Buzzfeed is going to waste their time concerned about what a bunch of internet forums are talking about and then end up being the ones who are wrong just makes mainstream news organizations look less than credible. And that's unfortunate, because I have said this many times, even with the mistakes made by many of these companies, they still tend to get it right often. There are a lot of alternative news outlets that are really bad and people trust them anyway. And there are a lot of mainstream organizations that are really bad and people trust them anyway. BuzzFeed News was actually up there on the list of credibility for me, but this has just shot their credibility as far as I'm concerned. If they're going to wage some kind of partisan attack against random people, they're wasting our time, calling it misleading, when in reality, it was just reporting that turned out to be true. They jumped the gun and they were wrong. But let me know what you think in the comments below and we'll keep the conversation going. You can follow me on Twitter for breaking news and live streams from around the world at Timcast. If you'd like to support my work, go to timcast.com/donate, where you can give whatever you'd like or nothing at all. My videos are always free and available every day at 4 p.m. Let me know what you think about this. I know it's kind of just stupid Twitter drama, but I think it highlights some important issues with the mainstream media credibility and random internet users' credibility. So thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you tomorrow.